2 weeks ago on The House, we talked about gun control on the 30th anniversary of the mass shootings at the École Polytechnique in Montreal. And that discussion generated a lot of feedback. I spoke with Heidi Rathjen, a survivor of the shooting and a gun control advocate.
Our message is it's now or never. Get it right. Go, put the public interest first. Call out the gun lobby's ridiculous American NRA-style arguments that don't apply here. And pass and do what New Zealand did, pass bold, decisive gun control measures. And the bolder they are, the more likely they're going to be protected from future governments.
After that segment aired, Harry Jennings wrote, "I'm a 60-year-old white guy who grew up on a farm and lived in the northern parts of Canada most of my life. Not against hunting with rifles or shotguns. Tighten the rules. No one needs or should own a semi-automatic rifle. Ban them." Toddy Richard, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, from Lampman, Saskatchewan, had a very different take. He writes, "We don't need or want any more gun control laws here in the West. We have too many now. And by the way, so-called assault rifles are useful for varmint control." Bruce Bennett in Whitehorse sent this note, "I have a gun, I hunt. Canadians do not need to put others at risk simply to support those people who want the sport of shooting things. Take up curling if you want to become proficient at hitting a bullseye." And another Whitehorse resident, Margaret Dumke, writes, "As a woman who has lived north of 60 for 26 years, I know that gun control cannot come soon enough. As a woman, I belong to one group of our population who is at risk to be a victim of violence, but the women and girls who are indigenous to this place are being victimized at horrendous rates." We received so many letters that we reached out to Sheldon Clare. He's the president of the National Firearms Association, and he's in our Prince George studio to give his take on the government's vow to ban and buy back up to 250,000 military-style assault rifles. Welcome to the House.
We're glad to be here, Chris.
All right, your organization is what, 70,000 members?
Yes, approximately 70,000 members.
And who are they? Walk us through who they are and what kind of firearms they own.
Well, the National Firearms Association is a representative of a broad spectrum of Canadian firearms owners. We come from all walks of life. We're college instructors, we're law enforcement officers, we're lawyers, we're teachers, we're truck drivers, the people who deliver your mail. We're all kinds of people.
So, and most of you would own firearms for what purpose?
All kinds of purposes. The people own firearms for really one purpose, is because they want them.
Right. The big question I think that's come up, we had an anniversary earlier this month, the 30th anniversary of the shootings at École Polytechnique, is around the Liberals' promise to ban semi-automatic military assault-style weapons. And I know you oppose that. Why does anyone need that sort of firearm?
Well, it doesn't come down to needing a firearm. It comes down to wanting. And the types of firearms that they are talking about banning and stealing from people with their silly, outrageously expensive program are really very, very common with technology that's been around for over 100 years. The modern sporting firearm is one of the most popular platforms in North America today, and it's popularly used for hunting, even the restricted types.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. The AR-15 platform, of course, is restricted in Canada. However, there are many firearms very like it, which are popularly used for hunting purposes. They have all kinds of applications for varmint control, predator control, and so on. Sports shooters spend tons of money on these firearms, much more than hunters do, in terms of ammunition purchases and in purchases of equipment and related accessories. A typical person who owns one of these firearms might be spending close to $10,000 on their property. So I think Mr. Blair's estimates of $400 million to $600 million are completely ridiculously low. The cost of this, in our estimation, is going to be upwards of $2.5 billion.
Right, but let me stick with this idea that people who look at this, people like myself who live in cities and don't see the value of it the way that you do in terms of a sports activity, they see it as a firearm that has been used in mass killing. So where's the line to be drawn?
That's simply ridiculous.
What's not true?
Triggers don't pull fingers. People do bad things sometimes, very rarely.
But it makes it easier, does it not? If you don't have to pull it more than once or repeatedly?
And people talked about École Polytechnique. Something people don't know about École Polytechnique is that the shooter in that particular instance, who had his vitrolic hatred of women, is outrageously out of control, just a complete madman. His firearm he had modified because he wanted to try to make it shoot faster. And what he had done is wrecked it, so it had to be cocked and fired every shot. It actually operated just like any other typical bolt-action firearm. He could have done anything he did with any firearm, and that says so in the coroner's report for École Polytechnique. So it's nonsensical to argue that a particular firearm is any more dangerous than any other firearm. What this is really is a financial issue. Does it really make any sense to go and ban and steal people's property for hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, when that money would be better directed at things like poverty alleviation, crime reduction programs, investigative services to help police actually collect information on these small numbers of people who are carrying out nefarious criminal acts. And as well, it could be also used for diagnostic equipment for medical services. These things would save lives, and they would make a difference to more Canadians than any attempt to steal property owned by
stealing is a strong word. There's a buyback program, so I'm not sure that qualifies as stealing. But
it's stealing. They're not buying back anything. I didn't buy anything from the government, and they're using my own tax dollars to try to steal my property. I don't think so. This has nothing to do with public safety. Gun control is based on a lie that it makes people safer. We've been having regimes of gun control for over 60 years in this country, and they haven't made a single lick of difference.
They haven't? Because the studies do suggest that the number of guns used in homicides and shootings is going down.
I don't think that you've seen any change whatsoever in crime rates, and I think there are lots of studies that support that. None of the gun control efforts made in Canada in the last 50 years have had any effect whatsoever on crime rates, violent crime, spousal assault, or on suicide rates. The same numbers of bad people choose to do bad or stupid things.
But that's part of the problem, isn't it? There are studies that back what you're saying. There are studies that also say that by registering long guns, for example, there was a difference, that police found it a useful tool in
Police will always say that they have found a useful tool that gives them more control.
Would you argue that most shootings in this country are done with illegal guns? Ones that aren't registered, ones that aren't properly owned by people who don't have a proper licensing?
The question is a spurious one. It doesn't really address the issue. Shootings in this country are done by people who are engaged in illegal activity. If someone's going to shoot somebody, you're either doing it for self-defense, which is just fine, or they're doing it to cause a criminal activity. It's already against the law to engage in violent crime. Yeah, but that wasn't my question. My question was whether most of the gun offenses that are committed in this country are done by people who are in illegal possession of a gun. I think that the statistical data shows that the people who are committing these crimes are in illegal possession. Right. So if it's tight, makes it more difficult to get a hold of a firearm and have to go through the proper licensing procedures, your argument is it makes no difference. It makes no difference at all. No, it really, really doesn't. The only people who are affected by licensing regimes, by registration, and by classification of firearms are people who are paying their taxes, going to work, and otherwise being put through an unnecessary regime by the government. That none of this gun control regime stops people who want to carry out nefarious acts from getting access to firearms or other things that are dangerous, like white vans or propane cylinder tanks or anything like that, and causing the problems that they want to cause. Right. Nothing stops that. It's a lie to think that gun control will actually make Canada a safer place. It does not. So you're preparing for a battle, I can tell, over this. Oh, this is a battle that we are going to fight and win. We have no choice. All right, I got to leave it there. Sheldon Clare, appreciate your time today. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. I'm glad to be here.